Hello there, my name is Glenn Mitchell, and I want to talk to you today about resilience. Now, the reason why I want to talk about resilience is because it's had to be quite a big feature in my life, and it's something that I've helped hundreds or possibly thousands of people with now. And over time, you kind of get a feel for things that are repeatable, things that work. So, as it says in the title there, I am currently a therapist. I'm a hypnotherapist, and for 14 years I was a prison officer or manager in a prison, like various jobs over the years. And one thing I could tell you is resilience is required in that sort of a role. If you go to your place of work and you're threatened with violence, for example, it has an effect on you. And it doesn't matter how tough you portray yourself or whatever it is, it has an effect on everybody. You wear some of that, you wear the stress of that. And so over the years, I was going to a place of work as a prison officer where the threat of violence was omnipresent, and sometimes it's just someone actually threatens you, and sometimes violence actually ensues. And all of that has got its effect. All of that raises your stress levels. And then, over the years, I would go into management roles and end up in the dreaded boardroom, and you require a whole different sort of resilience there because it's all about perception. First of all, how you perceived in the meetings, how do the staff out there perceive you, how you perceived all over the board. It's so stressful. And so in an environment where a big kickoff can happen at any time, but also you've got to be seen to be getting your work done professionally, and everybody's as good as their last fuck up, especially in that particular environment. So resilience is absolutely key. Now, it wasn't anything I ever gave much thought to until one day I sat down talking to one of our prison governors he's about to move jobs. He's going to another prison, and we're going to get somebody new coming in soon. And we're having a chat, and I remember saying to him, like, in some ways, you've been like an absolute visionary, and in other ways, you've been a pain in the ass. And I think that's the way it is with any boss, if I'm perfectly honest. And he laughed and he smiled and he said, "You know what?" He says, "You might be the most resilient person I've ever met." And I'd never thought of myself as resilient before. Until he said it there and then, I'd never thought of myself as resilient because, well, when I was younger, I wasn't. And I hadn't realised how much I had overcome. I didn't realise how much adversity I'd come through. And so when I was younger, up until about the age of 26, when I was actually in prison service, I suffered with terrible anxiety, and I had very limited resilience. My anxiety could become bouts of depression very quickly, and so all of this was incredibly difficult. I found life difficult to navigate in everyday aspects of life, but certainly whilst I was at university, that almost crushed me. Just the pressure of having to get exams or whatever, or pass stuff, or even be at social events and still do your work. I still don't know how anybody managed that. And then it was any pressure in the workplace whatsoever. And then it was fear that people wanted to do me violence wherever I went. Oh my gosh. And so there was one very good reason why I wasn't resilient. And it makes all the sense in the world now, but back then I couldn't see it. The reason I wasn't resilient was because I never got a break from it. I never actually got to take the stress off of me. And so I couldn't be resilient because the thing that was pushing down on me never let up because it was in here. It was absolutely in here. And so that's what I really want to help people with, is taking the pressure off yourself, because that's how you create resilience. You don't create resilience by being so strong. You don't create resilience by being some sort of toughie or whatever it is. You create resilience by learning to take the pressure off yourself and actually letting your body and mind respond rather than react. Now, if we pop over to the world of engineering just for a brief moment, resilience, when you're talking about, say, a piece of metal, for example, resilience is how much pressure that metal can have placed on it before it returns to its original form. And so you push down, maybe you have a sheet of metal, you put it in a vise, you push down on it this much, you take the vise off, it returns to its normal form, it's resilient to this level. You push it a little more, doesn't return to its normal form, it's bent out of shape, it's not resilient at that level. Well, that's what we are with stress. Like, not physical stress being pushed on like a piece of metal, but the stress of our lives, the stress all around us. Work stress, social stress, relationship stress, family stress, money stress, sex stress. Like, all of these things genuinely can be stresses. And all of that together, if we don't know how to take the pressure off ourselves, then we're getting crushed like a piece of metal that can't return to its old shape. So, how does one build resilience? How do we actually do it? And so, I guess the beginning is to, first of all, realize that we are under stress, under pressure. To actually realize that the way that we're feeling, this stressed way that we're feeling, has been caused by our perception of what's happening around us or to us. And so the first place we start is in our perception. How we look at things, how we frame things. And if life has been very difficult, if life has been very stressful, especially if it's a defined period, it can be very difficult to do this. But what's really interesting is if you look at people that have been in incredibly stressful situations like war zones, people that have like lived in and escaped war zones, people that have gone to war zones as soldiers or whatever it is. And very often, those that survive these circumstances have an amazing level of resilience because they learned to reframe things very quickly, otherwise it would mentally crush them. And one of the best examples of this, and it'll always be a fantastic example, is the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And he was a prisoner of war at Auschwitz concentration camp during World War II. And he talks quite extensively about the difference in the mindsets. Those that feel they got a reason to get through it tended to get through it, and often got through it with a lot less like negative effect. And those that didn't think that way tended either not to get through it, they would perish there, or when they came through it they were so much more scared. And so the first part is just that, just embracing that ability, that first of all that mindset of shift, that mindset of growth, that mindset that nothing is forever, and also that ability to frame a situation away from being so negative and disempowering to being something that can be empowering for you. Now, that to me is a huge one. Absolutely huge. Like, for example, in my old job when I was working in a prison, I got promoted a couple of times. And then I wanted the next promotion. I really wanted it because that would have put me in the proper upper echelons of management. And I believe that I failed 8 times. I think it was either 7 or 8 separate interviews where I didn't get the job. I mean, and at the time, that was like wearing me down. It was pressuring down on me, and I'm like, I can't take this. And some of the time I'd be like, oh my god, I'm just no good. And other times I'd be like, no, it's their fault. My face doesn't fit. I don't fit in with their agenda. And I was always looking for something to blame. And so I'd either feel like if I blamed myself, I'd feel pressure pushing down on me. And if I blamed externally, if I blamed the people that wouldn't give me the job, then I would feel anger. And so blame didn't help at all. But when I actually reframed it to, like, this could be a learning experience, for example, and then I reframed it to, I can take all of my experience from this and do something else with it. And eventually I did. I eventually left that career, do what I do now, and I took so much learning from those apparent failures. And to the point where I remember a job came up actually, and I was kind of told to apply for it. Now, if you get told to apply, there's a very good chance you're going to get the job. And I'd already, my mind had already shifted, so I didn't want it at this point. But just a few months earlier, if I hadn't made that mind shift, there would have been part of me that's like, yes, self-esteem can come back. And that's what we do. We place our self-esteem outside of ourselves. And so, the first way of creating and cultivating resilience is remember that you are responsible for your self-esteem. You can't get it from anybody else. You can try and get it from anybody else, but it'll be fleeting. Even if it's people that really care about you, if you get your self-esteem externally, it will always be fleeting because all it takes is a cross word to smash your self-esteem. If you bring it from internally from you, then nothing can hurt it. It's so powerful. So, one of the next parts is cultivating emotional intelligence. However, when people think about emotional intelligence, they tend to think about understanding other people's emotions. That is part of emotional intelligence, and those that understand other people's emotions are usually very good socially. They can usually be very good supportive friends. Some people use it manipulatively. However, understanding and connecting with your own emotions, baby, that is a whole new level of emotional intelligence. That is so far beyond just understanding other people's emotions. Just being able to read people is a cool skill, and it can be wonderful to help you support people. But imagine being able to do that for yourself. Actually connecting with your emotions, recognizing what the feelings are and what they mean to you, and then doing something with that. Now, this is one of the biggest problems when it comes to feeling like we haven't got enough resilience is we don't allow ourselves to feel our feelings. We numb them. And there's so many ways to do it. So the obvious ones are drink or drugs, which are very common, and they never help, they just delay. But there's other ones too. Like I know people that use the gym as their emotional numbing, and they say, no, it's my stress release, and this is what keeps me sane. So as long as I get my 3.5 hours a day, I'll be okay. It's like, that doesn't sound all that healthy. I mean, it might be relatively healthy for the body. I mean, I think 3.5 might be excessive, but I guess it depends what you're doing. But it's not that healthy for the mind. It is pure avoidance. And there's so many other ways of doing it. You could be a workaholic. You could even be super into extreme sports. Now, I'm not decrying extreme sports or working hard or the gym. What I'm saying is, when they take over, it tends to be a form of avoidance. And I've also heard people call like drink and drugs self-medication, which I get that. And look at it this way. What you're medicating is the symptom. You're never dealing with a problem. Medicating the symptom, never dealing with the problem. I've even heard people say, oh, I deal with my stress through like a few glasses of wine on a Friday night. And it's like, that's not dealing with your stress. That's literally the opposite of dealing with your stress. That is suppressing your stress. And what happens to anything that you suppress? It gets pushed down. It stays inside. It doesn't get a chance to get out of you. It doesn't get a chance to leave, so it stays there. And quite frankly, it festers. It absolutely festers. And so, make friends with your feelings and emotions. Now, sometimes at this point, people say, well, when I do that, these big feelings come up and memories come up and traumas come up and trauma responses happen. So at that point, we have to be open with the fact that we need support here. We need to get help in order to get through that, because, you know, drinking it away or weightlifting it away or whatever it is will never actually free you from the burden of that trauma. And so if letting yourself feel your feelings brings trauma up, that is a sign that you get therapy or counselling or mental health coaching. Go get some proper professional support to get free of that. It's not something you have to live with for the rest of your life. It's something that you can get free of. It's something we can decode our trauma responses. We can reprocess our traumas. We can feel completely differently. And so the next part there is about building that sort of social bonds, whatever they are now. There's so many different people in different ways. Like instantly, this is where the what's it called now? What's the word? You've got introverts. Thank you. This is where the introverts like, no, I don't want to build social bonds. Actually, that's not true. I don't know any introverts that don't want social bonds. They just feel like they can't have them. And believe it or not, this is people don't believe me with this. I'm a natural introvert. I've always been a natural introvert. I'm the guy that you put me in a party or whatever, and for the longest time I would just stand in the corner like because I didn't know what to do, and I got exhausted in social situations. And even now I have to manage that. I can't have too much. Like I can't be in too many crowded rooms and stuff like that. I am a natural introvert. People see me talking on here, they're like, well, you look like an extrovert. It's like, that's fine, I'm talking literally to myself. Literally, I'm talking to a camera and watching myself on the screen. There's nothing extroverted about that. Now, I have learned to be more extroverted in some ways, but I still am definitely a natural introvert. Like I said, too much time in too many social spaces leaves me utterly exhausted. So believe me when I say I get it, but that doesn't mean you can't have social connections. Now, most of the introverts that I know have got a small, tight circle. However, one of the problems that they face is if there's a problem in that circle, it really hurts them. And so sometimes we need wider bonds, wider reach. And there's lots of different ways you can do that, especially these days. And again, actually social media can be very helpful for this because you can foster wider connections without having to have too much actual physical time. And what I would say is, if you do foster social media connections, actually like get to know those people and find a few that you get to know and like over time. And maybe like, I don't know, meet at a social event, meet at some sort of networking event, even whatever it is, so that you actually expand out. And the other part is, you can have a wider circle without them all having to be like best friends. And what you find is, different people can support each other in different ways. Like, for example, I look at my closest connection, it's quite clearly my wife, and that is the person that I talk to the most, and we bounce off each other very, very well, and we support each other emotionally. However, let me think of an example here. Let's just say I've had a business deal go wrong. Now I know I can talk to my wife about that, and she'll be very supportive, but also she's not in business. She's got a very good job, but she's not in business. And so she won't fully understand my stress or my upset there. So I might talk to a fellow business owner for that support because I know they understand. And same thing, in her place of work, when something goes wrong, she tells me about it, but she gets support from some of her other work colleagues. And so it's just about that key idea of when it comes to our social connections, it is worth understanding that different people know you in different ways and different people understand different things. Now, I've actually talked about, first of all, reframing things, and I've talked about actually letting yourself feel your feelings and social circles and stuff. Now, one of the best ways to both reframe and let yourself feel your feelings and recharge, if you are introverted and you've had too much social contact and you're exhausted, one of the best ways to recharge from that, whilst soothing the mind, whilst letting your mind reframe pretty much all by itself, whilst allowing yourself that time and that space to sit with your feelings, is some sort of mindful practice. Now, it could be doing some sort of breath work. Breath's amazing. And one thing that I love to say is, if you manage the breath, you manage the stress. Like, just do some slow rhythmic breathing, just like in through the nose, out through the mouth, really slow. Like, here's an example. Slow and rhythmic, just like that. Do 5, 10, 15 breaths of that And notice how calming and soothing it is, because that reduces your stress and that will build instant resilience. And like some of the other ways is like, in the moment, we live in a world of constant change, and we have to, at a level, embrace that change. And that doesn't mean we have to embrace any nonsense. That doesn't mean we have to embrace something we don't agree with. But it does mean we don't fight the fact that things are changing. We might fight some of the changes that are happening if that's a passion for us. But the fact that things are changing, we're in an ever-changing world. There's not a lot we can do about the fact that they're changing. Sometimes in our own worlds we can take control of what's changing. But what we can't do is keep everything the same. So embrace change. Absolutely embrace change. And another one is deliberately cultivate an optimistic mindset. Now, if you have been stressed and if you have been feeling like resilience is an issue for you, you might be thinking, fuck optimism. I don't want to be optimistic, Glenn. I absolutely don't want that. Or, I don't know how to. Or optimists are just like fooling themselves. Well, that's not true, actually. An optimistic mindset has been proven time and time again through neuroscience research to actually cultivate very good resilience. And optimistic people are very often the people that actually get things done. And so, for example, when you sort of say, oh, there's no point, nothing's going to change. Or if you say, I'm going to go for it and try and change something. Now, if it didn't change, if it didn't work, the optimist then usually responds by saying, okay, I'm going to try again. And a lot of the time, people say, if I let myself be optimistic, if I let myself get my hopes up, then I've got further to fall, I'll be more disappointed. But again, it's been proven time and time again that pessimists are much more disappointed with failure than optimists, because optimists believe they can bounce back. Now, the way to cultivate an optimistic mindset is to deliberately have empowering conversations in your head. The way you talk to yourself matters. So practice. And you only need a couple of minutes a day, but practice talking to yourself positively. Practice talking to yourself in a way that is helpful and supportive to you. So like, just sit down, set a timer for 2 minutes, and sit there and just bombard yourself with empowering statements such as I can respond to anything, I can achieve anything I want. I am capable of learning the skills I need to do anything. And I like that one because I might be sitting here thinking, oh, I don't know how to do anything. But I know I'm capable of learning. And I am capable of learning. Hell, I learned how to walk. I learned how to talk. I learned how to operate the machine I'm recording on this. And so we all have learned things in our life, which means we all have the capacity to learn, which means we can learn whatever skills we need to achieve whatever we want. And so we can tell ourselves that. We can remind ourselves that we can build ourselves up. One more is, believe it or not, body posture. Straight up posture, shoulders back, is really helpful. Our physiology matters. So you might think, well, I don't want people to think I'm cocky. That's fine. Sit in a room on your own and practice setting up your shoulders back. It makes you feel good. It genuinely does. Give it a try. And one more would be learn from adversity, learn from the problems, learn from everything that's come up. And like, be very deliberate about that. Like, decide you want to learn from whatever bullshit's going on. Decide there's something to learn in it. Because when you do that, you go from that sort of learned helplessness to helping yourself. You go to that position of, I can do something. And no matter how bad the situation is, if you think there's an opportunity here, there's a learning here, then you can always reframe a really bad situation. And lastly, is just make sure you look after yourself. Make sure you take time for you. Now, the word self-care gets a pretty bad rep because it's become a fucking cliche, hasn't it? It really has, but it's different things to different people. So I tell you, to me, like, one of my favourite self-cares is, you know, hitting a punch bag or having a spar. Like, getting somebody to punch me in the face. I like it. I only like it under those conditions. So don't walk up to me on the street and punch me in the face. I like that less. But you know, we all like different things. And so for some people, self-care is, you know, getting their nails done, making sure they're perfect, looking at them going, just I love how they look, that's spot on, gives you that sense of pride, that sense of joy or whatever it is. For other people, it's getting in the hot tub and just getting those muscles massaged. For other people, it's a game of golf. I'm sure for somebody somewhere, self-care is somehow maths. I don't know how, but for somebody somewhere, a maths problem is probably self-care. And so my point is, it's different to everybody. Don't be pigeonholed by the words. Don't be pigeonholed that it has to mean something specific that you don't like. Look after yourself. Do things that you enjoy. Do things that you enjoy. Like, I gave you an example. A couple of nights ago, I had been working very hard. I was very stressed. I was kind of fed up by the end of the day because I couldn't switch off. I stuck on YouTube, and there was some pro wrestling, WWE from 1993. Well, baby, that was my year. That's when I was watching wrestling. I turned it on. I became a child again, and I enjoyed. That was straight up self-care as far as I'm concerned. So, building resilience. It's about looking after yourself. It's about building that internal emotional intelligence to recognize your own feeling. It's about reducing your stress or managing your stress. Cultivate a mindful mindset. Cultivate optimism. Cultivate your human connections. All of these things will build massive resilience. And take it from someone that once had no resilience to has been described as the most resilient person someone knows. And I help people to build resilience all the time. It all works. So, save this video. Come back and watch it whenever you need to. Pick the parts that work for you. And guys, hopefully I'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.